Chapter 81. Finally Meeting.
I have to complete a mission independently in order to become an official member.
Klein was taken aback.
But we might not even have a mission this week, and it might not be so simple. Wouldn't this mean that it'll take me 1 to 2 months to become an official Nighthawk? Only then will I get a pay rise.
Old Neil sniffed at the coffee and shot a glance at him.
It's only a ritual among Nighthawks. After all, we stand at the peak of beyonder danger and don't want our teammates to act like children who require constant care. This won't affect the salary that you'll receive as an official member, or your privileges needed to fulfill your duty.
So it's just a ritual to gain the recognition of the other Nighthawks. But Mr. Neal, why did you emphasize that it would not affect my pay grade as an official member? Did I make it that obvious?
Klein touched his face and gave an embarrassed smile before asking,
Does it have to be a mission of the Beyonder variety?
That should be the case, but your performance yesterday was truly outstanding. You ingeniously killed a Beyonder that's at least at Sequence 8. I believe Fry, Royal, and the rest have already acknowledged you. Therefore, Dunn might just assign you to an ordinary mission.
Old Neil said before suddenly sighing.
You'll have your salary increased several-fold. I'll never encounter something like that again in my lifetime.
Klein chuckled as he raised the matter about his sequence pathway.
Mr. Neal, do you think that the corresponding Sequence 8 of Seer is Clown?
In fact, thinking back to the description from the confidential documents, it did seem to add up.
A job good at fighting with artifice.
I can't give you any guarantees, but I think it's highly likely. Firstly, it matches up with what's said on the documents. Their agile movement and deception-based battle style are key points. Next, other sequence pathways have similar situations. Do you know the corresponding Sequence 8 for Mystery Prior?
Old Neil asked with a chuckle.
No, it's not written in the information provided by the church.
Klein shook his head honestly. Old Neil chuckled briefly before saying,
I'm close friends with 2 old guys from the machinery hive mind. They mentioned it in passing, as a joke. The corresponding Sequence 8 potion of Mystery Prior is Melee Scholar. Did you hear that? Melee Scholar. Goddess, I don't like melee combat at all. This doesn't suit the image of a Mystery Prior at all.
I can understand. Mystery Priors pursue the mysteries behind things. Melee combat is one of those mysteries.
Klein said after some thought. Old Neil finished his hand-ground coffee.
All right, let's not waste time. Let's continue our mysticism studies. You still have a lot of ritualist magic that you need to grasp. You also need to learn how to create amulets and charms.
All right.
Klein sat down and planned out his schedule for the day.
In the morning, I'll study mysticism and read through all sorts of historical records. I'll submit the compensation request. After lunch, I'll practice at the shooting club. Then, I'll head to the Deweyville Library at Golden Indus Borough and see if I can borrow the corresponding monograph and journal regarding the Hornassus main peak. After doing all that, if I have time, I'll spend some time at the Divination Club. I can't slack off on my acting. Once the compensation request is approved and I receive the money, I'll be able to buy a new suit on the way home. Yes, I'll apply for the materials tomorrow morning and try to make a protective amulet to ward off danger for Melissa and Benson.
In a dining hall adorned with a chandelier and elegant decorations, a few friends were congratulating Joyce Meyer on his escape from danger and his return to Tingen.
We all read the news. Just the written description alone was enough to scare me.
A man with a short stubble on his chin said wistfully,
Joyce, I can't believe you went through such an ordeal. Cheers. The tragedy is over now, and the sunlight shines down upon us. Exalted is the steam.
Joyce and his fiancée, Anna, raised their cups and clinked them together with their friends. Then they gulped down what little champagne they had left.
Anna was extremely worried at the time. I suspect that she cried every night. Whenever I invited her for some afternoon tea, she was always absent-minded. Thankfully, you're finally back now. Otherwise, I reckon she would have passed away just like that.
A young lady with a cute small nose and coiled brown hair said to Joyce as she glanced at Anna,
If Anna were to experience something like that, I'd be the same. I might be in an even worse state.
The aquiline-nosed Joyce gave his fiancé, who was sitting beside him, a gentle look. Anna wasn't used to expressing her emotions in front of others. She looked at the opposite end of the table and said,
Bogda, why have you been keeping your head down this entire time? I can sense how terrible your mood is.
The young lady with a petite nose answered in Bogda's place.
Bogda is sick. The physician told him that there's something seriously wrong with his liver. He can only use medicine to reduce the pain, but it doesn't treat his illness. He needs to undergo surgery.
Lord, when did this happen?
Anna and Joyce asked in surprise and concern. Bogda was a young man with short hair, but his face was sallow. His usually brilliant red eyes were replaced with a dim glow.
It happened last week. Since Joyce wasn't back yet, I told Irene not to tell you.
Bogda explained with a rueful smile. Joyce asked staidly,
Have you decided when you'll undergo surgery?
Bogda's expression changed a few times as he said,
No, I haven't decided yet. As you know, those surgeons are practically butchers. The patient is like a piece of meat on a chopping block, allowing them to butcher people as they please. I've read a lot of reports. They'll even use an axe for amputation. Lord, I suspect I might very well die on the operating table.
But if you delay it further, then surgery might not be able to save you.
the man with a stubble said as he tried to persuade him. Say we I. At that moment, Anna interjected.
Bogda, perhaps you can consider doing a divination. If the divination indicates that everything will go smoothly, then proceed with the surgery as soon as possible. If the outcome of the divination is bad, seek other means. Seek it with the help of the fortune teller. No, I should address him as a seer. I believe he can definitely help you.
For real?
Bogda returned with a question, clearly looking doubtful. Their other friends shared the same attitude.
Yes.
Anna nodded without hesitation.
I hired his divination services, and after divining Joyce's situation, he told me to return home. Your fiancé is at home waiting for you. Back then, I was like all of you, filled with doubt. But when I returned home, I really saw Joyce. He was really back.
I can testify on this point.
Joyce echoed. He didn't mention that he had sought Klein's help in interpreting his dreams. This was because the police had informed him that Triss hadn't been caught yet. Therefore, he had to keep it a secret in order to prevent revenge from being exacted upon him.
Lord, this is absolutely unbelievable. Is divination really that magical?
Amidst the shouting, Bogda thought deeply for a moment before saying,
Perhaps I should get a divination. Anna, Joyce, could you tell me the seer's name and address?
Anna heaved a sigh of relief and said,
You made a very wise choice. That seer is at the Divination Club at Howe Street. The Fae, his name is Klein Moretti.
Golden Indus Borough, Deweyville Library. Klein used the introduction note from his mentor's letter to successfully apply for a borrowing pass. As he flipped the tiny card in his hand, he asked a few librarians,
Do you have the research of the Hornacis Main Peaks relics here? It was published by the Lowen publishing firm.
A librarian immediately answered,
Please wait a moment. Let me check the records.
He turned around and looked at the drawers. He pulled open the letter that matched Hornacis and flipped through a card that was filled with single words that followed a particular order. On careful inspection, he shook his head and said,
Sorry, sir. We do not have this book in our collection.
How regretful.
Klein answered in clear disappointment.
From the looks of it, I need to write to the Lowen publishing firm or pay a visit to the Coy University.
Meanwhile, he sighed inwardly at how dated the management of the libraries of this world was.
You people need a computer. Unfortunately, I can't produce one.
Klein made a silent, self-deprecating comment and turned to ask,
Then, Do you have the journal issues of New Archaeology and Archaeology Summary?
We do.
The librarian confirmed.
A gentleman just returned them.
He flipped out the corresponding card and pointed Klein in the direction of the bookshelf. Klein went over to the bookshelf, scanned the journal issues, and pulled out the ones his mentor mentioned. Then, he randomly found a spot by the window to sit down. Under the bright afternoon sun, he began reading the information in the library quietly. Ancient relics don't solely exist on the main peak of the Hornassus mountain range. They're also spread out across the surrounding forests, valleys, and gentle slopes around the main peak. These relics are formed from lofty domes and gigantic stone columns. Honestly, they can be described as magnificent. Conmus, I'm curious as to how the original residents mine and process these rocks. Hypothetically, let's assume that they perform their mining operation on the spot without needing to send them up the mountain. There's a strange pattern where the relics become larger in size the closer you are to the mountain peak, but surprisingly, there are no ruins on the peak. According to our hypothesis, there should be palaces that don't resemble man-made buildings, divine halls used for sacrifices.
Palaces that don't look like they were man-made. Divine halls used for sacrifices. Could it be the one that I saw in my dream?
While Klein ruminated, he suddenly heard footsteps approaching him from a distance. He looked up and saw a familiar face, a face that often appeared on the papers. He had a squarish face, thick eyebrows, a firm nose, short, dark blonde hair, azure blue eyes, and tightly closed lips. All of these features belonged to a certain famous person from Tingen City, a philanthropist, entrepreneur, and the owner of this library, Sir Deweyville. Beside Deweyville was the middle-aged butler who Klein had met before. Klein watched them walk by from more than 10 meters away. Out of curiosity, he raised his right hand and lightly tapped his glabella twice. Chapter 82, Herb Store. Various colors surfaced as auras and entered Klein's eyes. He casually studied Sir Deweyville's condition. Klein muttered silently to himself.
He's very healthy. There are almost no hidden problems. His emotional state is horrendous. Amid the dullness, there's frailty. His mental state is frail. He has trouble sleeping well, but the purple aura at his head is completely fine.
As Sir Deweyville walked off and left the library, retracting his gaze, Klein pinched his forehead and sighed inwardly.
Being a tycoon sure isn't easy.
He didn't pay much attention to the matter and returned his gaze onto the journal issues in front of him. Klein didn't find a lot of clues after reading each of them. He could only confirm a few things. Firstly, there existed an ancient kingdom on the Hornassus mountain range as well as its surroundings. The ancient kingdom's history dated back to at least 1,500 years. Secondly, their architectural style was primarily about being grand. They left behind all sorts of murals, and from those murals it could be deduced that they believed that the Evernight would protect the loved ones of the departed. Finally, in the ruins there were symbols that represented the Evernight everywhere, but they were clearly different from the Evernight sacred emblem. Klein muttered with clenched teeth. He vowed not to court death.
If I had a chance, no. Even if I have a chance, I'll never go there.
After tidying the journal articles and returning them back to their original spots, he put on his hat, lifted his cane, and left the Deweyville Library. Divination Club. Bogda looked at the beautiful lady in charge of receiving guests and said,
I'd like to have a divination.
Angelica smiled politely and said,
Do you have a preferred fortune teller? Or would you like to flip through our introduction guide and choose the one that's most suitable for you?
Bogda pressed the right side of his abdomen and gasped silently for breath while saying,
I wish to have Mr. Klein Moretti divine for me.
Angelica answered with uncertainty.
But Mr. Moretti is not here today.
Bogda fell silent for a moment as he paced a few steps and asked,
When will Mr. Moretti be available?
Angelica said as she pondered over the matter.
No one knows. He has his own matters to deal with. From what I've seen, he usually comes here on Monday afternoons.
Bogda's face darkened as he turned around, planning to leave.
All right.
Angelica tried her best to prevent the loss of business.
Sir, you can choose other fortune tellers as well. For example, you can choose Mr. Hanas Vincent, who is famous in Tianjin City.
Bogda stopped in his tracks and considered it for a moment, before saying,
No, I only trust Mr. Moretti. Well, can I wait here for a moment? Perhaps he might come after he's done with his matters.
Angelica said with a warm smile.
No problem.
Bogda went to the sofa and sat down. Sometimes he stroked his cane. At other times he looked out the window, clearly looking rather impatient. Seconds turned to minutes. Just as Bogda's mind was in a mess, unsure if he should continue waiting or leave, he heard the beautiful lady exclaim in pleasant surprise.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moretti.
Klein saw the familiar Angelica and was just about to ask why it was always her. Did she not need to rest or take any days off? However, he immediately took into consideration that he was a seer, so it was not appropriate for him to ask such questions. Instead, he had to use the tone of a charlatan and say something like,
How marvelous it is for fate to compel us to meet once again, Madame Angelica.
Klein's mind whirled.
Would this sound like I'm hitting on her?
As he finally replied with a smile.
Good afternoon, Madame Angelica.
Angelica pointed to Bogda, who had hurriedly stood up from the sofa.
A customer wishes to hire you for a divination.
Klein took off his half-top hat, pinching his glabella twice while doing so. He thought in pleasant surprise.
Someone actually requested for me?
He looked over when his voice suddenly came to a pause.
Good afternoon, sir.
In his spirit vision, he saw the requester's liver looking dim. It was nearly black in color. It was making the rest of his body unbalanced, as his aura was thin in various places. Klein deliberated over his words, and he said in a serious expression,
Sir, you should see a doctor and not seek a divination.
Bogda stood stunned on the spot as he immediately gave a pleasant look of surprise while muttering,
How fascinating. Anna wasn't lying to me.
He hurriedly looked up at Klein in earnest.
Mr. Moretti, I've already seen a doctor and might have to undergo surgery. However, I'm frightened about the surgery. I would like to divine the outcome.
Klein didn't reject his request and nodded slightly. He thought,
The surgery of this era is really fraught with danger. Although Emperor Roselle had given the impetus, this era still lacks most of the necessary technology.
Klein then said,
My divination fee is 8 pence. Is that fine?
Bogda exclaimed in surprise.
8 pence? You're only charging 8 pence?
Bogda thought,
According to Anna's description and the performance Mr. Moretti had just shown me, I'm willing to pay at least £1.
Klein was embarrassed for a moment. He thought,
Haven't you heard of small margins with large volume?
After thinking for a few seconds, he calmly smiled and replied,
It is enough just being blessed with the ability to receive revelations from the divine and catch a glimpse of fate. Therefore, we must maintain our humility and suppress our greed. Only by doing so can we continue being bestowed with our gifts.
Bogda held his chest and bowed, his tone filled with sincerity.
You are a true seer.
Upon receiving Bogda's praise and trust, Klein's spirituality seemed to relax. As for the description of his principles, it also gave him some new insight. He turned to the beautiful lady beside him.
Miss Sneka, is Topaz available?
Angelica heaved a sigh of relief for Bogda as she smiled sweetly.
Yes.
After entering the divination room, Klein instructed Bogda to lock the door. Then he sat behind the table and pinched his forehead. He inquired with a smile,
Shall we use tarot cards for the divination?
Spirit dowsing was only suitable to determine matters related to him. As for drawing an astrolabe, it was too time-consuming. The end. Bogda had no objections.
I'll leave it up to you.
Therefore, Klein helped him shuffle and cut the deck before laying them out in an intis formation. Thanks to his uniqueness as a seer, Klein did not flip the other cards. Instead, he directly flipped the card that indicated the final result. He said solemnly as he shot a glance,
A reversed wheel of fortune. Things will develop badly.
The color in Bogda's face drained instantly, and his lips trembled.
Is it hopeless?
As Klein tried his best to think of a solution, he said,
Let me try a different divination method. Please leave your ring behind. Next, write your date of birth on this piece of paper. Then, please wait outside quietly.
Influenced by his gentle and comforting tone, Bogda calmed down and followed the instructions by writing down the information and leaving his ring behind. As he watched Bogda leave, Klein wrote a sentence on the piece of paper, outcome of Bogda Jones's surgery. He picked up the ring and paper slip and leaned back into his seat before using a dream divination technique. In a blurry and distorted world, he gradually found himself, only to see the gentleman collapse with an ashen expression. He was covered in white cloth as he was pushed out of the quaking operating room. This time, Klein didn't encounter anything strange. He no longer felt the sense of being watched, so he quickly woke up. He knitted his brows tightly as he considered how he was going to inform Bogda about the outcome. Klein was racking his brains when he suddenly thought of something.
The surgery may very well lead to death. I can try the restorative, ritualistic magic I learned today, but that would expose the matter of Beyonders. Besides, I have to apply for Captain's approval first. Yeah, and I might not be able to treat such a severe disease.
As he tried his best to memorize the address back then, Klein quickly remembered the details. He thought,
Mr. Glacis's lung disease was treated by an apothecary. He said that the medicine was extremely miraculous. What was it? Right. Lawson Darkwade, 18 Vlad Street in East Borough. Lawson's folk herb store.
He rapped the corners of the table and quickly made a decision. After using spirit dowsing to quickly determine if it was a good or bad idea, Klein walked out the door. When he saw Bogda stand up in a fluster, he returned his ring to him and said warmly with a smile,
I found hope for you.
Bogda asked, pleasantly surprised.
Really?
Klein did not reply him as he continued talking.
Your hope lies in the East Borough, on Vlad Street. It's related to the single-term Lawson. If you can't find it, come back here again on Monday at 4 in the afternoon.
Bogda nodded as he repeated himself. He excitedly fished out his wallet and produced 5 pence and 3 pennies. He had done, according to what Klein had said, without using tips to corrupt a true seer.
Good, good.
The corners of Klein's lips twitched as he received the money, but he smiled brilliantly.
I hope you will find hope as soon as possible.
After Bogda left, he handed over the commission like the previous time and also gave Angelica tips, pretending as though he had collected a solely. East Borough, Vlad Street. Bogda walked from one end of the street to the other, repeating it 3 times until his liver started to ache. Finally, he determined that there was only one place that had anything to do with Lawson on the street. It was the Lawson's Folk Herb Store, numbered 18 on the street. Mustering his courage, he walked in and caught the smell of the various herbs. He saw that the owner of the shop had black but very short hair. His face was round, and he looked to be in his 30s or 40s. The boss's formal attire resembled that of a village witch doctor. It was a deep black robe embroidered with all kinds of strange symbols. Bogda asked politely,
Hello, do you have medicine that can treat my disease?
The boss raised his head and swept his deep blue eyes across Bogda and smiled.
Your liver disease is very serious, but the premise of everything is whether you have the money. Do you have enough to pay for the medicine?
Bogda suddenly felt a lot more confident as he nodded frantically. He thought,
He can tell?
Bogda then asked,
How much is your medicine?
The boss fished out a bag of herbs from under the counter and said,
10 pounds. It's a very fair price. Add sufficient water and boil it into medicine. After boiling it, add 10 drops of fresh rooster blood, then drink it down immediately. This bag of herbs can be cooked thrice. You will be fine after 3 times.
As he spoke, he opened the yellowish-brown paper and threw in all sorts of strange herbs. Coal. Bogda gulped down his saliva. He thought,
This sounds extremely shady.
Bogda then said,
That's it?
The boss stared at him and immediately smiled.
Do you still want something else? What about this bag? Once you recover from your liver disease, I can give you a guarantee that your wife will be very satisfied.
He chuckled as he took out a black-papered bag of herbs and suppressed his voice.
There's mummy powder inside. Trust me, a lot of aristocrats consume this stuff. They put it in their tea or boil it as soup.
Bogda's confidence in the boss wavered to the point of feeling disgusted. He thought,
I believe in Mr. Moretti.
He took a deep breath, fished out his wallet, and pulled out the 2 biggest notes from what little was left of his gold pounds. Chapter 83, Carving. Holding onto the yellowish-brown paper bag full of herbs, Bogda staggered out of the Lawson's Folk Herb Store. While waiting for a tracked carriage, he suddenly came to a realization. He had spent 10 pounds to buy a bag of stuff. This was nearly a month's salary for him. If it wasn't for his trust in Anna and Joyce, he wouldn't have brought that much cash to the divination club. Could it be that the reason why Mr. Moretti only accepted 8 pence for his divination had something to do with his collusion with the boss of Lawson's Folk Herb Store so as to earn more? This was a classic scam written on the papers. When Bogda made this connection, he even began to suspect Klein a little. He even began suspecting Joyce and Anna. When a tracked carriage stopped in front of him, he looked at the herbs in his hand. Unable to bring himself to return, he entered the carriage with a heavy heart. Inside Lawson's Folk Herb Store. As the boss watched Bogda leave, he suddenly turned his head and shouted at the door where there was a pile of herbs.
Charmaine, stop purchasing herbs from today.
A handsome-looking youth with disheveled hair walked out.
Why, master?
The boss smiled and said,
This is the 16th customer that has come because of my fame. If this carries on, I believe the Nighthawks, the machinery hive mind, and the mandated punishers will notice me. And when the time comes, I'll need to consider heading to other cities.
Charmaine nodded in understanding as he asked with concern.
Then do we need to sublease this store?
The boss chuckled.
If you wish to stay, you can be the boss of this store. You are already capable at identifying herbs and concocting medicine. Of course, remember to deposit half of your monthly profits into my anonymous Backlund bank account.
Charmaine was already sick of never staying in a city for more than a year, but he was unwilling to give up learning the magical formulas that his master was good at.
But I haven't learned what you are really good at.
The boss leisurely rocked himself in a seat.
That's not something you can learn just because you want to.
A blackish-green, bubbling liquid appeared in front of Bogda's eyes. It smelled of stinking socks, and the color that makes one want to puke made him deeply suspicious about everything he had done today. When the rooster blood was dropped into the medicine, Bogda's father looked at his son worriedly and said,
I think surgery is the best option.
The few drops of rooster blood bubbled with the boiling liquid before vanishing. Bogda took a deep breath and said,
If this medicine is useless, I'll consider surgery.
Bogda's father gestured a triangular sacred emblem across his chest.
The Lord will watch over you.
By the time the boiling liquid had cooled down, Bogda had no intention of wasting the 10 pounds. He raised his right hand and closed his eyes. Flicking his head back, he gulped down the medicine in one go. The pungent aroma that had the noxious smell of blood swished around in his mouth as he nearly spat out everything he had just drank. That night, Bogda had an upset stomach. He went to the bathroom 6 times, and by the time the crimson moon vanished, he fell asleep groggily. After an unknown period of time had passed, he jolted awake, having dreamed that he was being reprimanded by his boss at work. Bogda heaved a sigh of relief when he discovered that he felt a lot more spirited.
Thankfully, I took 3 days of annual leave. I don't have to rush to work.
This was in stark contrast to the sluggish state he was in for the past few weeks. Bogda subconsciously reached out and pressed the right side of his abdomen. He noticed that the region which previously hurt when under slight pressure felt normal. He only felt the pain from ordinary pressure. Bogda was both surprised and doubtful as he got out of bed. He stretched himself and felt his health returning to him.
Don't tell me it was really effective? That apothecary was clearly just fooling me.
He fell silent for a very long while as he muttered,
According to the apothecary, I still need to drink it twice. Once I'm done drinking, I'll go to the hospital to get a checkup from a doctor. That apothecary didn't tell me how many times I can drink a day. I still think he's a cheat.
Inside the civilian staff office of the Blackthorn Security Company, from his prior request, Klein received a space where no one would disturb him. He held a carving knife and emitted his spirituality. He seriously carved the incantations and symbols onto 2 silver accessories. The incantation was a request to avoid misfortune and was written in Hermes. The 2 mysticism symbols symbolized the Evernight goddess, as well as the Empress of Misfortune and Horror. Aside from that, Klein also added the path number that corresponded to the goddess 7 and the magical characteristic. In addition to that, charms and amulets had to be engraved on both sides, and each side's symbols, incantations, and characteristics, their exact locations, or special formats, was in the realm of mysticism. The ones that were spread amongst the ordinary populace were filled with mistakes. At that moment, Klein had a lot of damaged materials to his right. Through repeated practice, and only after he confirmed that he had enough practice, did he dare to begin creating the amulets for Benson and Melissa. As he calmed his mind, his spirituality spewed out from the tip of the carving knife. The number 7 appeared on the surface of the silver accessories. He had already finished carving the incantations and symbols on the other side of the accessory. All that was left was to finish the remaining side. After putting down his knife, all his spirituality chained together as Klein suddenly felt a strange, majestic, and terrifying energy surge throughout the room. The commotion quickly vanished as the incantations on both sides of the accessory became complete with Klein's spirit vision. It emitted a serene blackness. He put down his carving knife and gently polished the silver accessory that was formed from a circle and a vertical piece. He felt a tinge of coolness from the mild to the touch surface. He happily placed the finished amulet and another one that he had previously finished into his pocket, planning to find an opportunity to give it to Benson and Melissa.
It's done.
Amulets created by Beyonders possessed a certain level of effectiveness. They allowed the wearer to unknowingly avoid disasters to a certain extent, but it was nothing too ridiculous. Furthermore, their spirituality would wane bit by bit. Unless one used a high-level ritualistic magic and created a prayer set, a year was the maximum one could use them for. As for high-level ritualistic magic, there was a terrifyingly high spirituality requirement. It wasn't something Klein could endure at the moment, Klein thought, nodding as he began tidying up the messy table.
When the time comes, I can use my spirituality to make another one.
He didn't make one for himself for the moment, because an amulet of that level had limited effects on him. Therefore, his goal was to gain a deeper understanding of incantations before trying to pair it with ritualistic magic. That way, he could create a few defensive amulets that could be activated specifically with sound. After everything was finished, Klein walked out the office and prepared to hand over the damaged materials. That was when he saw Captain Dunn walk over in his black trench coat. Dunn's deep and gray eyes swept across him as he smiled.
Klein, the Holy Cathedral has approved it. You're now an official member.
Klein expressed his delight.
Really? That's great.
Dunn nodded and said with a smile,
You can now receive a makeup pay of £3 for this week. You'll receive £4.50 every subsequent week until the advance payment is cleared. By the way, did I mention the Nighthawks ritual? Every official Nighthawk has to independently complete a mission. Only by doing so will you gain the recognition of your partners. In consideration of the outstanding performance you showed, I believe I can assign you an ordinary mission instead. When that happens, I'll formally introduce you to all the Nighthawks in Tingen City.
Klein replied without hesitation.
All right.
£3 plus his compensation of £7. Getting a new suit wasn't a problem anymore. Furthermore, he would still have plenty left over.
Well, who knows when my mission will arrive.
Klein waited all the way till Sunday, the day of Selina's birthday banquet. Changing into his formal suit and using a brush and handkerchief to tidy his half-top hat, Klein looked himself in the mirror before walking over to the first floor in satisfaction. At that moment, Melissa was sizing up Benson's clothes. Benson raised his cane, feeling a little lacking due to his sister's gaze.
Is there a problem?
He felt that there was nothing wrong with him when he inspected himself. He was already dressed quite decently. Melissa stopped staring at him and said with a serious expression,
Benson, that is a very old suit you're wearing. There will be a lot of excellent ladies and madams participating in today's birthday banquet. I believe that by wearing that, it'll be a form of disrespect to them.
Klein was originally filled with questions. However, when he heard Melissa's emphasis, he immediately realized what was happening. He went over with a chuckle and said,
Benson and I share a similar build. He can wear my other tuxedo.
He had already informed his siblings about buying a new suit. He explained it away by saying that his clothes had been torn while inspecting certain objects. Therefore, the company generously compensated him. Of course, he concealed the matter of him being promoted with a pay rise. He was afraid of scaring them and only planned to tell them after half a year. Such an explanation made Benson and Melissa extremely envious. They felt that the Blackthorn Security Company was an impeccable employer, Benson retorted, having not realized the gravity of the situation.
There's no need to, right?
Klein pushed Benson's shoulders up the stairs.
No, it's extremely important. My tuxedo is hanging on the clothes rack.
After watching Benson go up the stairs in a daze, Klein turned around and smiled at Melissa.
Are you hoping that Benson will use the opportunity provided by Selina's birthday banquet to begin a beautiful new romance?
He had been reading quite a fair amount of newspapers and magazines recently. He knew that aristocrats and middle-class banquets were typically grounds for blind dates. Melissa nodded solemnly.
Yes, Benson has missed out too much because of us.
Klein looked at Melissa as he suddenly shook his head with an exasperated laugh.
Sis, why are you like a mother?
Chapter 84. Elizabeth. Seeing the unconvinced look his sister's face, Klein suddenly felt like it was a good opportunity. He sized her up and said with a solemn expression,
Melissa, I think you aren't showing enough respect to today's banquet as well.
What?
Melissa wore a puzzled look. Klein pointed at her neck.
As a lady, you are lacking a necklace that accentuates that area.
Without waiting for his sister to say another word, he smiled as he fished out a silver amulet wrapped with angel wings from his pocket.
Thankfully, I prepared one for you.
Melissa was taken aback at first before she asked.
How much was it?
Klein silently scoffed as he explained with a chuckle.
Sis, your concerns are really quite misplaced. Haba, it's actually not very expensive. Since it was in an incomplete state, I imitated an item that I've seen before and engraved blessing incantations and beautiful patterns on them.
You engraved them?
Melissa was indeed distracted.
How is it? What do you think of my work?
Klein took the opportunity to hand over the amulet to his sister. Melissa studied it before gently biting down on her lip.
I like the surrounding angel feathers.
The corner of Klein's mouth twitched.
If you think the incantations and symbols I engraved are ugly, then just say so. There's no need to mince your words. An amulet's value is in its effects.
Just as he was about to urge his sister to accept it, he saw Melissa put on the necklace with a forced expression on her face. She then carefully adjusted the positioning of the amulet.
Perfect.
Klein sized her up and gave her exaggerated praise. Melissa shot him a glance and looked down at her amulet. She said listlessly,
Klein, you were never like that before. Acting like that.
Perhaps it's because of my good job. With a decent income, I've become more confident.
Klein interrupted his sister and gave a preemptive explanation. He sighed inwardly.
Sigh, even though I received the original Klein's memory fragments, making myself appear natural in most major aspects, certain fine details are still there. I'm still used to presenting my real personality, especially when I'm getting closer and more familiar with Benson and Melissa.
Melissa seemed to accept his explanation and pouted her lips.
It's great that you're like that. Really great.
After the two engaged in a short conversation, Benson came down, having changed his clothes. He wore a white shirt with a black vested tuxedo. His black bow tie and a pair of long, straight trousers made it seem like he had undergone a complete makeover. It was like he was a successful businessman after years of hard work. Klein chuckled inwardly.
Same for the receding hairline. Wah, excellent, Benson. It suits you very well,
he said with a brilliant smile while throwing up his hands. Melissa also nodded in agreement on the sideline.
The facts show that my clothing is more important than me.
Benson gave a self-derisive comment. Klein took the opportunity to fish out the remaining amulet and repeated his explanation from earlier before saying,
I also made one for you.
Not bad. I'll bring it with me.
Benson accepted it without a fuss as he quipped,
Klein, I wouldn't find it odd, even if you were to suddenly know how to style your hair, make clothes, fix watches, and feed curly-haired baboons.
Life is just so full of surprises.
Klein replied with a smile. Following that, the siblings tidied themselves up before walking out the main door. They took a trackless public carriage and arrived at the North Borough's Fania Street where Selena's house was. The Wood family lived in a terrace house as well, but unlike Klein's place, they had a porch. They had a small lawn in the front, which made it look very elegant. When they rung the doorbell, Klein, Benson, and Melissa only had to wait for around 10 seconds before they were able to see the star of the day, Selena Wood. With a head covered in wine-red hair, the girl gave Melissa a delighted hug.
I like this dress of yours. It makes you look exceptionally beautiful.
Standing beside Selena Wood was her father, Mr. Wood, senior employee of Backlund Bank's Tingen branch.
Welcome our honorable elder brother. Welcome our young historian.
He deliberately addressed Benson and Klein in an exaggerated manner. Klein retorted as he took off his hat and replied with a smile.
Young historian, why doesn't he add the description of me having a conscience? Mr. Wood, you look much more spirited and younger than I imagined.
His style of flattery had unknowingly inclined himself to the foodaholic empire. Benson held out his hand and shook Wood's hand.
I know a lot of bank employees, but they're all equally arrogant and stiff, as though they're the latest machines. None of them are as civilized as you.
If you were to meet me at the bank, you might not say that about me.
Wood laughed cheerfully. After exchanging pleasantries, Selena, who was wearing a new dress, led the siblings inside with a hop in her step. At times, she would mention in her usual tone that,
Elizabeth is already here.
And at other times, she would suppress her voice, saying,
Melissa, your brothers are more handsome than I imagined.
Klein helplessly looked at the two 16-year-old girls walking ahead of him.
Hey, I have good hearing, although you are flattering me. This isn't right. I'm still quite far from being considered handsome. Tisk, Miss Selena, how ugly did you imagine Benson and I to be? A balding, gloomy, fat man with a pale expression and lifeless eyes?
Klein pinched his glabella in passing as he diligently practiced his spirit vision.
Miss Selena Wood is healthy. She's excited and very happy. Mr. Wood's lungs are a little problematic. Right, I see his pipe.
Klein swept his gaze across the crowd while in a good mood.
Elizabeth, Melissa is here.
At that moment, Selena introduced with a brisk tone. Nue. A girl dressed in a blue frilly dress walked over. She had naturally curled brown hair and adorable baby fat. Klein was stunned when he saw her, because he knew the girl. He had helped her choose an amulet back at the underground market. Elizabeth greeted Melissa first before looking at Benson and Klein. She was stunned and her brows knitted slightly as though she was thinking about something. Soon, Elizabeth smiled and politely greeted them as though nothing had happened. Klein also pretended not to recognize her. Under Wood's lead, they came to the sofa in the living room where they were introduced to Chris, Selina Wood's brother, and the other guests. As Klein watched Benson chat with Chris and the other solicitors happily over the topic of their neighbor, Mr. Shaud, he couldn't help but feel envious.
I don't have such socializing skills.
He picked up a cocktail from a table in the corner of the room as he listened quietly. At times, he would nod and echo with a smile. It didn't take long before all the guests arrived and the banquet officially began. As too many guests had been invited, the Wood family's dining table could not accommodate everyone. Therefore, the banquet was done in a buffet manner. The ladies' maid served the steak dishes, roast chicken, fried fish, mashed potatoes, etc., and placed them on different tables. The valet was responsible for carving the meat, allowing for guests to take what they wanted. Klein couldn't help but click his tongue when he saw the elegant enamel plates and silver cutlery. He felt that the Woods were being too extravagant as a middle-class family. When he thought of what his sister had previously mentioned, he was puzzled.
Since they're so rich, why would Chris need so many years to prepare for his wedding? Yeah, it was probably to save up money to buy this cutlery that would have taken them so many years to afford. To such families, they have to look respectable.
Amidst his mixed emotions, Klein picked up a plate and walked in front of a dining table. He forked a piece of honey-glazed roasted meat. At that moment, Elizabeth, with her adorable baby-fat cheeks, came over. As she looked at the food, she whispered,
"So you are Melissa's brother. Thank you. Selina likes the amulet I gave her a lot. She said that she felt healthier the moment she wore it."
Klein suddenly recalled the reason for selecting an amulet for the girl beside him.
Selina. Amulet. It was to give to a friend who liked mysticism as a birthday gift. That friend was Selina. Selina liked items related to mysticism.
Klein frowned slightly as he smiled politely.
It might just be akin to a placebo effect.
After saying that, he began waiting for her to praise Emperor Roselle. However, Elizabeth's reaction was that of confusion.
What's a placebo effect?
It means it's completely psychological. At times, we believe that we will turn for the better and end up really becoming better.
Klein explained crudely.
No, she said it's different from the amulets that she bought in the past. It feels different.
Elizabeth emphasized. She cocked her head and shot a glance at Klein and said curiously,
I never expected Melissa's brother to be an expert at mysticism.
As you know, I studied history, so it's common to encounter similar matters.
Klein diverted the topic skillfully as he asked,
Are you also studying at the Tianjin Technical School?
No, Selina and I were Melissa's former schoolmates. Later, she went to a technical school. I study at the nearby Ivos Public School.
Elizabeth explained seriously. A public school wasn't established and maintained by the government. Instead, it was a school that accepted students from the public. It was an evolution of good grammar schools whose goal was to groom graduates so as to enter university. The schools were rather expensive, and they would consider the students' family background. It could even be out the Tematov range of typical middle-class families. She didn't talk much. After choosing her food, she returned to Selina's side. Mummen Vauxby half mek. After congratulating the star of the day on a happy birthday, the banquet gradually came to an end. Klein and Benson were invited to a game of Texas Hold'em. The small blind was half a penny, and the big blind was a penny. As for Melissa, Elizabeth, Selina, and their friends, they went upstairs. It was unknown if they were chatting or playing games. Klein's luck was pretty bad. He played about 20 rounds, but didn't receive a good hand at all. All he could do was fold and be a spectator. When he flipped the ends of his cards again, he found a 2 of hearts and a 5 of spades.
Shall I try a bluff once?
Klein considered for a moment, but did not manage to muster the courage. He also resisted the urge to use divination to cheat. He covered his cards and rapped the table, indicating that he was not making a call. Then, He got up and left the table to head for the bathroom. Klein shook his head as he proceeded forward.
Roselle was also a person with an obsessive-compulsive disorder. He actually found an odd reason to name the playstyle Texas.
At that moment, he suddenly came to a halt as his pupils constricted. His spiritual perception told him that there was a strange fluctuation upstairs. Chapter 85. Urgency. The strange, twisted, and obscure fluctuation was short-lived. Shortly afterwards, Klein even suspected that he was hallucinating. If he wasn't considered rather skilled at spiritual perception, it was very likely that he would have written off the abnormality. Klein frowned as he thought of his sister upstairs. He tightly held onto his cane as he went around the bathroom and hobbled to the wood household staircase. He quickly went upstairs while following the traces with his spiritual perception before arriving at the living room beside the balcony. Klein mumbled as he raised his hand and tapped twice on his glabella.
This should be it.
Auras penetrated the walls and the large wooden door before entering his vision. Most of the colors were ordinary with a blurry outline. However, one of them in particular was rippling with a sinister dark green color over its surface that slowly corroded inwards.
Just as I thought, something wasn't right.
Klein wore a usually stern expression as he reached out with his right hand and removed the silver chain which was wrapped around his left wrist. He held the silver chain in his left hand, allowing the topaz to dangle before him. When the topaz stopped swinging, he traced the spherical light and chanted inwardly,
The room before me has danger caused by the supernatural.
Normally, spirit dowsing was only suitable for divining something that was related to him or the specific circumstances in a small region around him. As such, Klein described the chant in very specific manner. The danger could affect him and the room was right in front of him. After repeating the chant 7 times, Klein's eyes widened as he saw the topaz rotating in a clockwise motion rapidly. It was an indication that there was indeed danger caused by the supernatural inside the room, and it was of considerable danger.
Selina is a mysticism enthusiast. Did something go extremely wrong when she was dabbling with some sort of ritual? What should I do?
Klein massaged his brows and wrapped the chain around his wrist before knocking on the door. Thump! 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 He knocked on the door 3 times rhythmically and wore an amiable smile on his face. The door opened with a creak. Melissa, who was wearing her new dress, appeared in front of Klein.
Klein, is something wrong?
The girl didn't expect her brother to be here, so she was momentarily surprised. Klein responded with a smile, without any sign of distress.
I was just curious since I heard you gals enjoying yourselves. Sorry for disturbing all of you.
Sorry for disturbing all of you. We're playing with magic mirror divination. Selina knows a lot, and it's very fun.
Magic mirror divination. Sis, why don't you gals play Charlie Challenge or Ouija boards?
Klein shook his head, feeling both peeved and amused. He looked behind Melissa and into the living room. He saw Selina with her beaming smile and deep dimples. However, in his spirit vision, the wine-red-haired girl, who was holding a silver-coated mirror, was being encroached by the sinister dark green colors. As his mind whirled, Klein deliberated over his words and said,
Heh, I won't be interrupting your game. Ah, right. Where's Elizabeth? I had chatted with her over FaceApp Grammar. She mentioned that she wanted to ask me some questions.
Elizabeth?
Melissa sized her brother up and said in an eccentric tone to emphasize her words,
She's only 16.
Hey, don't let your imagination go wild.
Klein immediately explained.
It's a very normal academic discussion. Elizabeth is very interested in history and ancient languages.
Melissa took a deep look at her brother before saying,
She's inside. I'll inform her.
All right.
Klein took a step back and moved away from the door. While watching his sister turn around, he heaved a sigh of relief. Although it wasn't the best of reactions, he was thankful that the person in a danger wasn't Melissa. He only waited for about 10 seconds before a puzzled Elizabeth walked out. She asked curiously,
Mr. Moretti, what's the matter? I never said I was interested in history and ancient languages.
At that moment, her sentence was halted by Klein's stern and solemn expression. Her nerves tightened as she seemed to sense that something wasn't right. Klein took a few steps diagonally as a gesture for Elizabeth to hide partially behind the door. The girl with the chubby baby fat was influenced by the sudden serious atmosphere, so she unknowingly followed. Klein halted and turned around, speaking directly to the point.
As you know, I'm a mysticism enthusiast.
Elizabeth nodded and replied,
Yes, I even believe that you're an expert at mysticism.
No, I'm only an enthusiast, but this doesn't stop me from noticing that your magic mirror divination has turned into a problem.
A problem?
Elizabeth nearly raised her voice as she hurriedly raised her hands to cover her mouth. Klein thought for a moment before saying,
I know words alone will make it difficult for you to believe me. Return to the room, and when Selina isn't paying attention, steal a glance at the front of the mirror which Selina has hidden away from all of you.
How do you know that she hid the front of the mirror from us?
According to the information from the Nighthawks, more than 90% of the time, magic mirror divination cases which involve evil share such similarities. Klein smiled and said,
General knowledge.
When the doubtful and frightened Elizabeth returned to the room, his composed smile vanished instantly. His face looked worried.
Even though we're all in the North Borough, to go from Fania Street to Zootland Street will take at least 15 minutes of travel by public carriage. By the time Captain arrives after making a round trip, the situation might have deteriorated to a hopeless state, if only Benson and Melissa wasn't here. But I can't deal with those hidden and unknown existences. Do I have any means to contain it? Right, Selina is a mysticism enthusiast. Her room definitely has no lack of extracts, essential oils, herbs, and other items.
Just as Klein was racking his brains for a solution, Elizabeth sat next to Selina by using an excuse of discussing something with her. A girl opposite her sipped a mouthful of red wine, and under the teasing looks of everyone, despite her blushing, she mustered her courage to ask.
Can you help me divine when I'll meet a romantic and handsome gentleman?
Selina lightly coughed twice as she rubbed the mirror's back and said,
Mirror, mirror, tell me, when will the gentleman in Yonina's heart appear?
After repeating it 3 times, she picked up the mirror and raised it in front of her. Seizing this opportunity, Elizabeth suddenly turned her body and stretched out her head to take a glance. According to her expectations, she felt that she would see Selina's face and half her face. However, the only thing she saw was Selina. The tiny mirror only had Selina, and it was Selina's entire body. The mirror was completely pitch black, with Selina standing in the middle with a cold expression. Elizabeth trembled all over as she lunged backward and leaned against the sofa. She momentarily forgot to breathe. She involuntarily trembled, and without giving an excuse, got up immediately, stumbling to the door. She didn't even dare to turn back to look at the beaming Selina.
Yonina's gentleman will appear on the Sunday of the 2nd week, half a year later.
Amidst giggles, Elizabeth opened the door and left the room to see Klein, who was standing in the shadows of the wall lamps in his tuxedo and half-top hat.
Mr. Moretti, I.
She stammered in a daze. Klein calmly smiled.
Don't disturb the girls and ladies inside.
Infected by his smile, Elizabeth calmed down significantly. She extended her hand and closed the door as she quickly walked over to the wall lamp.
I saw it. I saw only Selina inside the mirror. A devil like Selina.
She whispered hoarsely. Klein's expression turned serious as he asked in a deep voice.
Do you know which is Selina's bedroom? Do you know where her mysticism items are?
There. The mysticism items are in there as well.
Elizabeth didn't hesitate to point at a room diagonally across. Klein held his cane and walked over, opening the unlocked wooden door. Under the streetlights and the crimson moon's illumination, he turned a valve and lit a gas lamp. A pale yellow light glowed as he swept the area and found bottles of extracts, flower essence, boxes of herbal powder, candles, and amulets. These items were placed on tables or neatly arranged inside a rack. Their names were given on sticker labels. After confirming the items, Klein said to Elizabeth, who had followed behind him,
Do you want to save Selina?
Elizabeth subconsciously nodded before asking in a daze,
Yes. Will it be dangerous?
A certain amount. After all, I'm only a mysticism enthusiast.
Klein replied frankly.
A certain amount of danger. Is there anything you need from me?
Elizabeth pursed her lips tightly for a few seconds before saying. Klein smiled warmly as he comforted her.
Don't be nervous. Now, all you have to do is pretend to return as though nothing had happened. Return to Selina's side. 5 minutes later, remember. 5 minutes later, tell Selina that you have a pleasant surprise and bring her to me. Knock on the door softly. 1 long knock and 2 short ones. Following that, well, leave it to me.
Elizabeth thought over it silently before nodding seriously.
All right.
Seeing her return to the living room, Klein glanced at his pocket watch. He closed Selina's bedroom and quickly cleared the desk. Then he picked the items needed and placed them on a chair. Immediately following that, he picked up 2 faint candles with a light aroma. He placed them on the upper left and right corners of the desk. They were symbols representing the Lady of Crimson and the Empress of Misfortune and Horror. Klein planned on holding a ritual here to borrow the Evernight goddess's powers to ward off the mysterious and unknown existence that was affecting Selina. As he was only a Sequence 9, the ritualistic magic he knew wasn't strong enough. In order to succeed, he needed Elizabeth to lure Selina into a sealing circle, right in the vicinity of the altar. Therefore, he needed to consider situations in which Selina might notice and resist. Due to these reasons, Klein planned on using suspension-style ritualistic magic